What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, a New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Gary G. Money Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up, bro? Things all good on this side, man. Relaxing and enjoying some a little off time before we get into the hecticness of the sports season. Listen, I said last episode, I said, whenever you start seeing like kids go back to school and stuff, like you know that your life is about to get a lot better because like the sports college football, NFL, NBA is coming back. But as the Pelicans so wondrously and so humorously reminded us, New Orleans sports is it's a finicky place, man, and it's already starting. Saints players are getting hurt. Obviously, Derik Queen is out till whenever, and it's just you look at their schedule and you're like, man. got some teams on that schedule. So life is about to get a lot better as far as the things you watch, but it's probably about to get a lot more stressful as well. So I'm enjoying it, man. I'm enjoying that. Outside of that, man, it's the W is obviously keeping me up to par. I think it's crazy how the W is kind of experiencing some of the things that the NBA experienced, where like they got these rashes of injuries where like star players are missing ginormous amounts of times. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, like Fee has been out, Brianna Stewart is out. Just a lot of like injuries, man, and it sucks because it takes away from the beauty of these athletes and the time that they put into the game and everything. But it's just interesting to see that it's not really just the NBA issue. It's starting to kind of trickle down into the W, whereas like last season they had no injuries. Caitlin Clark played all the games, Angel Reese played all the games, Asia played all the games, all the stars played all the games. So it's something that's intercrossing the sports. And so just some super interesting things to see. But outside of that, man, I'm good. I'm enjoying. August is a tough time for the city. Obviously, with things coming up, and we'll get into that later on as we get closer to the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. But the city's pushing on. Some crazy news just came out about the city. I don't want to even get into it. But yeah, man, everything's all good on this. How's everything with you?
Yeah, everything's blessed. I mean, you're right. It's not just the NBA, WNBA. Like high school kids, AAU kids are seeing injuries at an unprecedented rate, which makes you think, like in the world that we're in, where kids are specializing, getting training at 5, 6, 7 years old. Like, is it starting to catch up to it? Where like people are doing too much prior to
getting
when they
burnt out so early,
right.
yeah.
Right, and their limbs and all everything that's being pulled and pushed so long, so early. So it'll be interesting to see like how it's really not just basketball; it's sports in general, how they evolve, right, to try to overcorrect this. But yes, you are right. The Pelicans schedule did release, and everything's good on my end until I saw the first like 30 games. My eyes perked up. And I'm like, well, here we go. But before we get into that, make sure you guys are locked in with us. Follow us on Twitter, on X, that's on IG, on TikTok. That's NO_basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below. And if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So, Garrick, let's just jump into it.
Let's get into it. Yeah, let's talk about it.
First of all, shout out to the Pelicans and the social media team and the organization for, you and I talked about this off the pod, being aware of the situation that is a behold the Pelicans for basically the entire Zion tenure, right? They went full head when we saw the Black Cat with the schedule release preview, and everybody's like, why would you do that? And then they dropped a video with Herb Jones and with Trey Murphy, basically just buying into the fact that, hey, man, it's not been great as of late, so we're going to control our own luck. Let's get your thoughts on that first. What are your thoughts on that? How they literally just jumped in 2 feet head first and say, hey, man, we understand things ain't been great.
If you've been following this podcast or if you've known me, at all in your life and have talked to me at all, my favorite thing about a human being is self-awareness. Why is that? Because it is very, very loud when you don't have it. It is very, very loud when you don't have self-awareness. And I like it, bro. And I'll be the first to tell you, I was the one when they posted the preview. Hey, the schedule release is coming, and he had the black cat on it. I was like, listen, I don't know if I would put a black cat anywhere near any marketing of the Pelicans at all, especially this season coming up with what's out the door and what could potentially, which the national media loves to remind everyone of what could happen, in the following draft. That was just something I would not. There's still an element to me that's like, I understand and I love the self-awareness, but tempting or playing with the sports gods in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, in the big 2025, 2026, it's bold. I like it. Very risky. Very risky. We do not know.
Goes along with the theme of the offseason.
Exactly. We do not know when the lease. What up, Bird Talk? We do not know when the lease agreement of that agreement that Sean Payton made with Dormammu and Mephisto for that Super Bowl. We don't know when that lease ends. But listen, I love what they did. I love leaning into it. I love the self-awareness. I think if you ask anyone, if you ask 100 people, who do you think the cornerstones players of the Pelicans franchise are right now, today, at this moment, you'll probably get 90 or 80 to 90 Zions, but I would venture to bet that you would get 100 Trey Murphys and Herb Jones, especially with the contract extensions and things like that. And so I love having Trey and Herb kind of be the spokesman. They both have, charismatic personalities. I told you Herb Jones reminds me a lot of like Kawhi and Peyton Manning and Arch Manning, where they kind of have that genuine hilariousness to them, where they're not even trying to be funny. So I enjoyed it until they actually showed the actual games, and I was like, okay.
No, you're absolutely right. And look, the first thing people are going to say, well, where's Zion? They sent Zion out to do the draft lottery. Now, obviously, they dropped in the lottery and things like that. Zion's at Summer League. Like, everything that the Pelicans have done this offseason is pointing toward we believe in Zion. So I just wouldn't overthink it from that perspective. But yeah, I agree. I thought Herb was hilarious. I just thought they did a really good job of just jumping in and again, following the theme of this offseason. So the schedule dropped. The Pelicans are nationally televised 2 times. I didn't stutter 2 times out of 82, 2 times. What are your thoughts on that? Right? Obviously, the Pelicans have a horrible year. Everyone thinks the Pelicans is going to have a horrible year because they've already declared the Atlanta Hawks as winners of the trade, even though the draft is a year away from that. What are your thoughts on that? Coming off a bad year, fair and unfair?
Yeah. Like we've been saying all offseason, your reputation is your reputation until it's not. And the only way to change it is on the court. And so, with Zion and his availability being questioned, and Trey and Herb coming off of injuries, and Pelicans having a terrible season last season, you kind of lucky you got 2, to be honest with you. But that's even should be even more motivation for this organization, which with a new voice in there, and Joe Dumars and Troy, and Troy Weaver, and the young rookies who are brash and let that they're coming, and Zion, and all of these guys should have a chip on their shoulder, and and they should want to go out and be the this year's Detroit Pistons, right? The Pistons didn't have any national TV games last year either, but they worked quietly to the side, and before you know it, they were in the playoffs, and now they're rewarded with, I think, 20 or 25 national television games. Same thing with the Orlando Magic, right? They didn't have a lot of games last season. They got on TV a lot. and now they're rewarded, right? They worked on the side, made the playoffs, made some meaningful strides, and now they're rewarded with more national television games. So, the Pelicans find themselves in a very similar path, and so now it's on them to work to the side and work quietly and do what they need to do, and not worry about playing on national TV.
I agree. And if you're watching the Pelicans at home, that just means more games of AD and Joel, which I think are top 5
Definitely
elite
positive. Yes.
broadcasters in the NBA. So I don't think it's that bad of a deal. So let's just jump into it. Before we get to the different parts of the season and the different road trips and all that, let's just start with the first 10 games. Derik, the Pelicans historically have not gotten off to a hot start. We talked about it last year at this same time, how it'd been 10 seasons since they had a winning record in their first 10 games. To echo last podcast, the NBA said, oh yeah, let's look at what your first 30 games are going to be. So when you look at the first 10, the first 30, there are only 6 of the first 30 games, Derik, that's damn near half the season, that are versus Eastern Conference opponent. And typically you would say, okay, well, that just means you have more easy games on the back half of the season. But the problem with the Pelicans historically has been that they get themselves in big holes, whether Zion's available, whether Brennan Ingram's available or not, and then have to miraculously climb themselves out of them toward the end of the season, which again, depending on who's available and who's healthy, that's a tough task to be putting yourself in a situation where you have to make the playoff. You have to have success in this season. So when you open the season with Memphis, let's talk about that, right? Like that's a game in itself. You're in Memphis, of course. You're versus Ja, of course, who seems to have every spectacular game possible versus the Pelicans. Hopefully you have Herb Jones back for that game fully healthy. What are your thoughts on open the season on the road versus a rival in a situation where you need to build some momentum early to start this season?
Yeah, man. What up, Holly Grove, Steve? What up, Michael Morgan? Yeah, man. I listen, that the Memphis New Orleans kind of, it's not even like a rivalry. It's just like, hey, that team is like very close to New Orleans, and Zion and Ja kind of know each other and kind of like each other. And so, hey, let's have a little, a connection. I think the NBA was trying to make this a rivalry, at some point, and those guys are still young. There's still time for their careers to turn around and it becomes some kind of down south rivalry, whatever the case is. But to open the season in Memphis, and listen, that Memphis team, they have a lot of belief in their young players. Jalen Wells, they let Desmond Bane go. I think this is an opportunity for the Pelicans to make a statement again. That the Memphis team is not the same Memphis team that you've known. And so it's going to be tough, but you have to play these road games eventually to get to wherever you need to go. And so this is a good opportunity for the Pelicans to start off on the road. You know that you're going to be starting off on the road. And so this gives you an opportunity for training camp and the beginning practices to kind of all focus on being on the road, doing the road bonding, because it's a lot of new faces on the roster. And so I do think that, that Memphis game is going to be that opening game is going to be a difficult game to play. But I don't think it's the Pelicans are for sure going to lose that game. It's not one of those type of deals. I do think the Pelicans, if they're not considered at the top of the West, obviously, I do think that they're in like that third tier where like a lot of teams could be. And I think Memphis is closer to that level than like closer to the first, at the top. So I do think that's a game that they could go in and kind of try to hit the ground running, especially Zion. Like this is a good opportunity, game one. Which better way to announce your presence and announce what did he say last season? Out for revenge. What a better way to show it than game one against Ja.
Right. Again, and this is a team that's plagued the Pelicans in the last couple seasons, just with their size in the front court. And so to open the season, especially with Derik Queen like projected to be healthy right around that time, like I'm really interested to see how the Pelicans come out, because not only one, do I want to see how the style of the Pelican looks different. Do they play more up tempo? Do they try to outrun Memphis from one way? Do they try to hunt guards on the perimeter. What does the offense look like? This is that game for you to kind of see some of those things, but also how do you answer, or what's your response to, hey, we got Zach Edey, we got Jaren Jackson Jr., we've got a bunch of big guys in the front court. What are you going to do versus that? Is that a double big lineup? Do you see Carlo and Eves play? Do you see Zion bump down or bump up, right, in terms of playing guard and things like that? So that's a game that really sticks out from that perspective. The home opener, I think, to your point, and because I think the Memphis game is to your point, I think a lot of people are down on Memphis because of the trade and because of their own team saying we're not good enough and because of the controversy around Ja and things like that and what's going to happen next. I think people are down on them. People are super up on the Spurs, right? People, and rightfully so, right? Wemby coming off his injury or illness of his own, them coming off back-to-back rookie of the years, them having the number 2 pick in the draft. Everyone is projecting the Spurs to take that leap and to push for the top 6, to be in the playoffs. This is the game I think is for an opportunity, especially at home, with a season where your fans just watched hell go through, for you to make your statement versus the team that everyone is saying, this is the team we expect to explode. This is the opportunity, I think, for the Pelicans to really make their start to the season. Because look, it don't get no easier after that. Yeah, Boston is beat up and, they've got a bunch of changes on their roster. Who knows where they're going to be. But then you got Denver, you got the Clippers, you got OKC. Like that is a murderer's road just to start the season, right? And so what are your thoughts on, again, facing up versus Wemby, who everyone's projected potentially to be an MVP-like season in terms of his explanation? Where's Zion at in this factor when you were the number 1 pick and you've been passed by? What are your thoughts on the home opener?
Yeah, that game's going to be rocking because, Wemby brings out a crowd just because of who he is regardless. Right. But you throw in there, San Antonio is not that far from New Orleans. You throw in there that's like kind of, sort of, a quick trip that people can make. People could come to New Orleans and make a thing out of it. And then, it being the home opener in the city, with, guys who you are excited to see, and Zion and Trey and Herb and guys like that, that you're excited to see. And then the new guys, right? This will be the first look for, Jeremiah Fears in front of the home crowd and in front of, if I don't think he'll be playing, but Derik Queen, if he's available around that time, and Sadiq Bey, and got Jordan Poole, like in front of the crowd. And I think, the Pelicans have a lot of guys that can play off of energy. When you think about like Jeremiah Fears and Zion and Trey and Jordan Poole is electric when that flow goes, and Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins, a lot of guys that play, a lot of energetic basketball, and when the crowd feeds into them, they can be energetic. And I think that to your point, I think that's going to be a wild game, and that'll be a test because, again, the Spurs are going to be well coached, and they have a lot of like young talent, but they also have who we've known to be a Pelicans killer, obviously outside of the last 2 seasons, but De'Aaron Fox, right? Like he has been a Pelicans killer for a while. And so, he's there, and you have Wemby, and they just have a lot of guards and big, talented guys. So the Pelicans are going to be able to go in there and test themselves early against them. And if Zion is available, again, I keep saying it over and over again. We remember the game against the Spurs where Zion got the game-winning block to seal the game. Like this is the kind of game that you need to raise your level up. When you step on the floor with Ja and Wemby, these are your peers. Ja and Wemby and Luka and Shea and Tatum. Like these are the guys, and Anthony Edwards, these are the guys that are looking you in the face and saying, we're better than you, and things like that. These are the opportunities for you to go out and make statements. So I agree. I think that home open is going to be electric.
Right. And so, again, we talked about the rest of the week. I didn't even say the rest of the month, the rest of the week for the Pelicans. And the fact of the matter is, no matter what the schedule is going to look like when you play people, it's going to be a battle in the NBA. I know there's some East games sprinkled in there, but night in and night out, you just talked about, hey, these are your peers. You could do that for almost every team in the West and be like, damn, and this was just Monday, right? Like that's the situation that teams are walking into the season. Denver is another game that they have later on. That's a litmus test because Denver is,
Mm-hmm.
if anyone's going to push OKC, that tends to be the name that people gravitate to, and rightfully so. They have the best player in the world. Now, historically, the Pelicans have matched up pretty well versus the Nuggets. The Nuggets made some additions, added some depth. I'm excited to see what that looks like. But that next game versus the Clippers, who people have crowned the winners of the offseason, it's going to be the tale of youth versus experience, because if the Pelicans are to Joe Dumars' credit and to what he said and the moves they've made and the players that you just mentioned they acquired are going to lean into this high up-tempo, frenetic, run and gun type offense, 7 seconds or less. What a better test than the Clippers to see how well that works, right? Because they're going to be a team that tries to slow you down, beat you up in the half court, and get to certain spots. Can you outrun them early in the season and see what that looks like? Like, so part of this, the Pelicans starting with such a hard slate of games, both in the first 10 games and the first 30 games, is two things. The Pelicans have to get off to a good start just because we've seen what it looks like, what they don't. Some of these other teams, like the Clippers, they may not be looking at it like, hey, we need to start the season strong. They may be looking at it, hey, we just need to fit in the top 6 by the end, and we'll work our way to the season. That's an opportunity for a team like the Pelicans to say, hey, no, we need to grab these earlier on in the season. So what are you looking at in that matchup in LA to pop off the first week?
I'm glad you said that. I have something to say after we get through these first 10 games about these 10 games. I have something to say. The Clippers, I think the Clippers are going to be a very, very interesting test because they should be a very different style of basketball, than the Pelicans. Again, they went and got John Collins, who is like a poor man's version of Aaron Gordon, who we've talked about as being like one of the better matchups for Zion in the league, as far as like, speed, athleticism, and size, because that's one of the more important points. But I don't think John Collins is as good defensively as Aaron Gordon. And so it's going to be a very interesting time. We saw, the Clippers. We've seen all the Pelicans players have great games against the Clippers at some point. You see Brandon Ingram have when he was here have a great game against the Clippers. We all remember Trey Murphy's games against the Clippers. Zion was causing all kind of havoc against the Clippers last season. And even we saw it. That's when we kind of started asking the question of why would you show it to us without, if we can't have it. And Zion stepping up and saying, I got Kawhi. Like, I got him. And so, like, that's when we started saying, okay, if that's what you're going to do, that needs to be something that you do. And so there's just a lot of, like, good matchups and good, good storylines in between the Clippers and the Pelicans. But, again, this is a good opportunity for the Pelicans to look some of the NBA's greats. Talking about Kawhi and James Harden, and now Chris Paul is there, and Brook Lopez, and just a lot of NBA greats to look those guys in the eyes and say, like, not this season. It won't be like that. And so I'll be very interested to see. That is one of the games, and it's a cup game. And so I'm super interested to see, if the Pelicans can find a little bit of additional motivation, because like that is usually something that that teams can rally around and try to launch themselves into a better second half of the season. It starts with that first cup game against the Clippers, and that's something that the Pelicans should be looking to win. They should be looking to win as many small things as possible in this season. That's going to be mirrored with questions from the day you made this draft day trade.
I absolutely agree, and lucky them, they get to go from that game to verse the champs in OKC. Look, every game is going to be – I'm interested to see the Thunder this year. Obviously, they proved they could do it last season. With the target on their back now, I'm interested to see what the second season looks like, because every night people are going to be giving you their best, right? But for the Pelicans specifically, for Zion specifically, remember that 360 dunk that he had versus Phoenix that was unnecessary the season after his team got eliminated? Now, the Pelicans didn't make the playoffs last season, but they got embarrassed versus OKC the season before. And so this is really Zion's opportunity to verse the champs to, again, make your statement, and Trey Murphy together, make your statement of where you match up, whether you win the game or not. Do you hold the court? Because last season, every time you played versus OKC, it got ugly quick, right? What does it look like this season with a healthy roster? You get to play Charlotte. Congratulations. This is the most fun game, I think, of the first 10 game of the season. And not just because at Dallas versus the Mavs, and I go to every single one of those. But it's the rookie showcase. Because it's Cooper Flag, again, the Mavs should have a really good team, a really big team that, again, I'm curious to see what the Pelicans look like and how they match up versus bigger teams, especially if Derik Queen's not available. But they have Cooper Flag, but the Pelicans have two players who look, think, and play like they think they're the best player in the draft. And so in games like this, where you get a rookie showcase of some high lottery picks, guys tend to go at each other or go at it, period, to show I'm better than that guy. And for a guy like Jeremiah Fears, and if Derik Queen is available, who this was his high school teammate at Mount Verde, like, I just think this is going to be an exciting game for a lot of reasons. Not just because it's Mavs versus Pelicans, but I just think there are a lot of rookies on the court who are looking that they got something to prove. What do you think about it in this particular matchup of the two combined states?
Yeah, I think that's a very astute point about the rookie showcase. I think this one is I would like for this to be a big Trey Murphy game because the Mavs have a lot of front court depth, but their back court is not, that back court is not as good, especially with Kyrie being out. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of names there. And then Clay, obviously he is who he is in the NBA pantheon, but he's older, right? And it's we're gonna see that. I kind of want this to look at this game as I'm looking at, and again, this is a cop-out. I'm looking at Zion once again because you're looking at the Pelicans past and Anthony Davis, and you are very, very quickly looking at the next Duke superstar without you getting anything in between when those two guys came into the league. And with Cooper Flag being who he is, where he's from, it is. I think this is one of those things where someone needs to get to Zion and say, you need to make sure they know not quite yet, not yet, because Coop is going to be really good, and his rocket to stardom can be very quickly, just like Victor Wembanyama. And in between both of those guys, Vic is still super young. It's his third year in the league. Mm-hmm. It's just Coop, and he is super duper young. Mm-hmm. There's your next two. There's your next two fandoms. And so if Zion wants to be one of the ones, you have to make sure that when you get your opportunity to play this new number one. It reminds me of the clip from Toy Story, where Woody was they just got buzzing, and Woody had the nightmare of, let me tell you about this trade. I don't want to play with you anymore. And Zion needs to be like, this is where Zion needs to look, and not quite yet. And so I'm super interested to see how Zion approaches the Cooper Flag, Anthony Davis, Derek Lively kind of front court. But super interested to see how Zion deals with the Zion Cooper Flag of it all. I want to see how that works, because Zion still has the opportunity to be the superstar that he wants to be. But there's a lot of talent coming in, and people are starting to look past and see what's coming up next out the pipeline. We haven't even talked about the guy who everybody says the Pelicans just ramrodded the entire draft pick, and AJ DeBayo, who's going to BYU. He's going to be coming in, and so you gotta start gripping the league at some point in time, man.
I couldn't agree more. So you finish out the first 10 at San Antonio, at Phoenix, which I think is going to have to be a must win, because out of all those 10 games, that's the easiest one on paper. What are some of the more intriguing stretches? Like you look through the schedule, and there's a couple of long road games, there's a couple of homestands. Nothing that like stands out crazy. Yes, the Pelicans have 15 back-to-backs, which is top 10. Go figure in the NBA for most back-to-backs. My only question is how many of those does Zion play? Right? Like again, there's a balance of how do we keep Zion available through the course of the season and into the playoffs, but also at some point you got to play. Like this ain't the Joel Embiid where you've already had all these knee injuries and this and that and the other. A lot of Zion injuries have been like hamstrings and ankle, like things that are not long-term. So from that standpoint, like at some point, the team is going to need you to play back and things like that. But what are your thoughts on, some of the more intriguing stretches or things that pop out to you in the schedule?
Yeah. So first of all, let me talk about what I mentioned earlier about the first 10 games of the season. And I'm going to say this. I'm looking, the Pelicans should be able to go at least 6-4 on that. If Zion plays, I think this is what I have in the first 10. Okay. I have them winning in Memphis. Okay?
I think that's a winnable game. Depending who's available game one, because
exactly. This is contingent on Zion and Trey being available. Exactly.
Okay.
This is contingent on Zion and Trey being available. At least Zion and Trey being available. I think that they can win in Memphis.
Okay.
I think that they can win the home opener.
I think they need to win the home opener
against San Antonio. I think they can beat Boston.
I think so too.
I look at that Boston roster. Yeah, Jaylen Brown is there. Yeah, Derek White is there. They got Drew Holiday ain't walking in that door. Jason Tatum ain't walking in that door. Kristaps Porzingis ain't walking in that door. Al Horford ain't walking in that door. You got like guys like Luka Garza getting minutes and like Anthony Simons. Like listen, I understand. I give all respect to Boston and what they will be when they're healthy. But they're gonna. I watched that Boston game that DeJounte hurt himself. That game wasn't a runaway game. Like the
Jerry was hooping.
He was the Pelicans was there. Yeah. So I think they can start off 3-0. Now I think they lose against Denver again. Tough game, but I think they lose against Denver. I watched the Pelicans pack the Clippers up like a bunch of times. You just gonna have to show me, but that's fine. You give them a loss there. That's fine. I have a win there, but you could I would be okay giving them a loss there. I have a loss in OKC. That's fine. I will say I'm very happy to see if Zion is healthy. We finally get to see OKC versus healthy Zion and like healthy team, like partially healthy team. Like I'm early in the season, where guys should still be hopefully available. But that's a loss. Like OKC's a loss. I think they beat Charlotte. The Dallas game, I'm interested to see because again,
a hard one.
If you look at, it's gonna be a tough one, but I think that's a toss-up, and I give them a loss there. That's fine. I give them a loss in San Antonio, and then I think they can win the next two. I think they can beat Phoenix and Portland, and I think that's not like out of the realm of possibility for the first 10 games. So I think that they can do 6-4. And come out of there and have some positive momentum. I do think, I think a lot of these teams, you look at their names, like the name of the team, and you start to think about, what they've done. But if you kind of look at them like that, like Boston is not the same Boston. The Clippers, as many names as they are, they had nothing for Zion and they didn't add anything for Zion. And so I think that's my hot take. I think that they could go 7-4 and maybe even 7-3 if you consider like the Dallas game being a potential coin toss. So that's my hot take. So
I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. I'm not. This is what I'll say. I think that there's been a lot of change in the roster, but in terms of like the actual rotation, outside of like Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, Jeremiah Fears, question mark, who knows if he's in the rotation to start the season. Derik Queen, who knows if he's available to start the season. And then maybe Kevon Looney. The rotation is the same people. And so for me, I think training camp will be very important to see how much did you keep from last season, right? Like when Zion was playing with some of the guys before Trey went down and they sat Zion out, like how much did you retain in terms of giving Zion the ball and knowing how to play off that and building from that so that you're not starting from zero, right? Because I think Jordan Poole in a lot of ways can fit the CJ role, and I think it'll be natural for him. And that I don't think anyone's being put, maybe Jeremiah Fears and Derik Queen, but like those are rookies anyway. So like I don't think anyone's being put in a situation where you got to change your game to fit around other players. And so in that situation, I'm like, the Pelicans should start with a little bit of chemistry and cohesiveness, but I think that's going to impact how these first 10 go. Like, is everyone feeling each other on the court? Mm-hmm. Like even that game versus the season over last year versus Chicago, DeJounte wasn't really DeJounte. He was just, I know he had been dealing with a lot, right before that with his mom and things, but like on the court, like he was just kind of like trying to fit in and not trying to mess up. And you've seen that through different players at different times. But like the majority of the team should kind of know how to play off each other anyway. And so I'm just really curious to see how much cohesiveness comes out in that first 10 games where you can say, oh, it looks like they've been playing together for some time. That's my only question on the first 10.
No, that's fair. And again, this is contingent upon Zion being available, Zion being, the Zion that we saw at the end of last season going into this season. Is a contingent on Trey being available and Herb being available. But I just think that, like, if Zion is there, I've seen Zion give all these outside of OKC, like all these teams problems. And so I just want to see, especially with guys like Jordan Poole who can get their own shots and Jeremiah Fears who can play and Trey taking his leap from last season. I just think that the Pelicans have a lot more talent than like they're given credit for. And so I just think that they can get in, get into the season and start off strong. So that is my hot take for the first 10 first 10 games that I am ready to go on the 11th game of the season saying, I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I'm sticking with it and it's fine. So, and some other stretches for me. Obviously, Wednesday, March 11th. We'll talk about that. That is one of the games that I'm looking for. The home game against Toronto, BI's first game back. I'll be looking forward to that. There's an early homestand, November 12th through the 19th, that has the Blazers, the Lakers, the Thunders, and the Nuggets. I'm looking forward to that murderer's row. I think that's going to be important. And then the 6-game road trip. That's in February, I think. February to March 6th. That's going to be a tough one because you got Utah twice. And again, we don't know what Utah's going to be thinking of. But, we've seen the Pelicans go up to Utah and guys play and they don't play and the Pelicans still lose. So that is a tough place for the Pelicans to play. You then have the Clippers, the Lakers, the Kings, and then the Suns. Again, some of those, you will see where some of those teams are at that point in time, but that particular row, that 6-game road trip, I think that's going to be super important. It might, be dependent on some standings at that point in time. And so I think that's going to be super duper important for them to take advantage of if they can. And according to Positive Residual, who does a lot of the score, like rankings of the scoring and everything. Rankings of the schedule, how difficult the schedule is. Apparently, the Pelicans have the hardest schedule, this season, like according to that website. And so, the entire schedule as it is going to be, a murderer's row because again, you're in the Western Conference, so you're going to be playing all the Western Conference teams more than the Eastern Conference, and so you're gonna have like some difficult nights, some difficult stretches. But again, this is life in the NBA, and nobody cares. And so I think the Pelicans have to go into this season looking at it like that. No matter who's available, and unfortunately and luckily, they have a lot of practice dealing with that. So I have the November 12th through 19th early homestand and February 26th through March 6th 6-game road trip on the West Coast.
Okay, this is the one that stands out to me. So I don't know if this is true or not, but I just feel like it's true. I feel like January's have been like very important months for the Pelicans. Like this past January, it basically was like, all right, this season's a wrap, and we're gonna go ahead and punt on the season, even though Zion came back. The season before, or a couple seasons before, was like the Pelicans were number one in the West, and then the hamstring happens in January, and so like I feel like Jerry's an important March. So they end January at home versus the Mavs and the Celtics. Again, I think those could be winnable games. But then they start February at Nuggets, at Kings, at Thunder.
Ooh.
I think that is a pivotal stretch because, like, if you go 500 right there, or you start the week strong, I think that gives you some grace the back half of the week, because playing in Denver and playing at OKC, like in consecutive road, like that is a tough stretch to overcome. You brought it up already. The Brandon Ingram returns to New Orleans March 11th. CJ McCollum returns to New Orleans March 8th. So literally back-to-back games, you're seeing two of the cornerstones of the franchise in previous years make their returns. The Pelicans got to hope that like the Smoothie King Center, it doesn't become like the Staples Centers or Crypto Arena for Brandon Ingram when he was playing with the Pelicans. Every time he went there, no matter who played for the Lakers, BI was putting up numbers because he wanted to hoop there. Hopefully that's not the case for against the Pelicans, but I think those are going to be two emotional returns. Again, for what it was worth, CJ had a rough go in New Orleans, and not to his own volition, just the situation that it played again. But I think he meant a lot to this organization, to this roster in particular, and really to the city in terms of impact that he made. And again, say what you want about Brandon Ingram, whether you love him, whether you hate him, whether you think he's this, whether you think he's that. He revitalized his career in a lot of ways in New Orleans, and it became something that BI belongs to the Pelicans. So you don't talk bad about BI, even though we may know some of his flaws, things like that. I think he really wanted to stay here. It's just feelings were involved, I think, when rubber hit the road and this is what we have and this is the best we could do. I think a lot of feelings were involved there. I think he really did want to be here, but he wanted to show that he's worth at a different price. And so I think, again, he'll be received well in the Smoothie King Center. I don't think there'll be any bad blood with him or CJ, but I think those are going to be two really emotional nights for the players involved, the fans, and things like that as well. Those are really the stretches that stand out to me. I look at the very end of the season in April, and again, who's available at this point makes a whole lot difference and where teams are slated. But like I look at April and I see at Portland, at Sacramento versus Orlando, versus Utah, at Boston, at Minnesota. If the Pelicans are in a situation where either they're fighting for the play-in or they're in the playoffs, right? And they are fighting for the top six or whatever that may be, I think that's a favorable April to close out with, like winnable games. Yeah, you got some road games, but I think Minnesota is going to be a playoff team, so they're probably not playing anyone the last game of the season. Like I don't think my expectations for the Kings are super low. So anything I say moving forward is just with the anticipation of the Kings not being very good, because I just don't know how they're going to guard anyone. And so like if you have those type of teams toward the end, I think you could finish strong. Whether, again, you're fighting to get in or you're fighting for seeding from that standpoint. What do you think about the close of the season in terms of how the Pelicans, again, depending on who's available, could potentially wrap up?
Yeah, I think, you don't have to question, what are the Pelicans playing for at the end of the season, because they don't have any reason to not be playing regardless of what the record is, because they don't have their pick next season. And so I think the Pelicans will be motivated. Again, you think about all those other teams ahead of you that you were talking about. All of those teams might have varying agendas at that point in time. But I think the best thing for the Pelicans to do is very reminiscent of what we talked about the season before last, when we said the best way to not get it into, when they were terrible in close games and could not win in a close game. What did we say on this podcast? The best way to not get into a close game, to not lose a close game, is to not get into a close game, right? Just don't let it get close. Play hard and win off your talent, and don't mess around and have turnovers in games and stuff like. I think that is the same exact advice I would give to the Pelicans this season. How you worry about what's happening? How you not worry about what happening in April and what's this team doing and what's the standings looking? Place yourself firmly in the top 6, and that way you won't have to worry about is this team resting? Is this team resting? Get in, make the run the Pacers did, the Pistons did. When they switched over to the next season, decided to hell with it, we all going for it. Start early, start winning games early. Again, it starts with Zion now getting into shape, getting in ready, training camp ready, coming into the season ready to go game 1. And that way you won't have to worry about who's playing who in April, because you'll take care of your business early. And so I think the end of the season is going to be the end of the season. It's going to be some ugly basketball. People going to be resting. People going to be, getting ready to get into this all-encompassing, incredible, mind-blowing, mind-bending draft lottery, where the next incredible LeBron James will be drafted. I think that either they'll be getting ready for that or they'll be resting to get ready for the playoffs. And you won't have to worry about that if you take care of your business early.
Right. I think it's one of those things where, again, the Pelicans, again, to their own volition and their own video, they can control their own luck. I think a lot of teams probably are not looking at the Pelicans as a playoff team. And so if you can come out of the gates like gangbusters, to your point, some of those other teams, nobody's looking at the Pistons last year to be a playoff team either. And I would say that the Pelicans have more talent to start the year than the Pistons did last season. And so I think it's important to see how it works together. Does it come together? I think the West is going to be a battle of attrition. Who can get through the season with their best players available at the end? And then how do you match up once you get to the playoffs? I think it's going to be very similar to the last couple of years where 2 through 7 and 2 through 8 is separated by 3 or 4 games, 5 games, whatever it may be. So as all the injuries happen, and they're going to happen around the league, who has the deepest roster to withstand those things, right? And whose stars are staying on the court, which historically has been a problem for the Pelicans. So the schedule is upon us. You know the dates, you know the games. At this point, you're waiting for training camp to get this thing going. What you got left for the people is wrap up and get to the 3rd week in August before we get some more basketball.
Yes. As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, man, the schedule's upon us. Make your plans. Make your travel arrangements. I want to make sure I go catch. I've already talked about going to New York to see the Pels play the Knicks. I'm excited to go there. But we'll be at most of the games, and you'll be seeing a lot more of us. Let's just put it like that coming into the season. So appreciate everybody hopping on with us early. It's Friday. I know people got things to do. They at work. As soon as you get off work, you got Friday weekend plans. TGIF, welcome to the weekend, everybody. Appreciate y'all hopping in and coming show love. As always, follow me at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your socials. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys in the next one.